Good evening, Lindsay. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, Mr. Mayor, and you're good to start whenever you're ready.
Okay, that's great. Sorry about that, everyone. Just a little bit of a tech hiccup, but we're all good. So thank you very much, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. So really appreciate everyone being here, staff, colleagues, and the public for our planning meeting of December 13th, 2021. To start things off right away, we'll just ask that the clerk put our Canadian flag up on the screen so we can take a moment to focus on that. And next we have our silent reflection, please. Great, thank you. And for our territorial acknowledgement, as we gather, we're reminded that Guelph is situated on treaty land that's steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people today. As a city, we have a responsibility of the land of which we both live and work. And today we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples on whose traditional territory we are meeting tonight. With that, any disclosure of pecuniary interest or any general nature thereof for the items that are in front of us tonight? Not hearing or seeing any at all. So we're right into the consent item, which is 2021 development charges bylaw. Their recommendations are there. Would someone be willing to move consent on that? Okay, Councillor Hofflin and Councillor Karan is willing to second. Thank you. Anything further on that? Okay, yes, over to you, Councillor O'Rourke. Is it a question or comment?
It is a question to staff about what may be in the next DCO, not DCO, DC study. And it's related to a decision we need to make next Monday. So I just want to know about service levels and just had a quick question for them.
Okay, I'll allow that question to move ahead just because I think we have a couple delegations, I believe. So I'll just allow that question to go, and then if there's nothing further, I'd be wanting to call the vote on that.
Sure, I had intended to pull it, but I'm happy to ask the question now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, if it's just the one question, I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, we know that right now in the DC bylaw, that there's no line for long-term care or childcare or social services, right? But we could have capital projects in the next several years. So I'm just wondering if you have any advice for us in terms of setting a higher service standard and whether that benefits the city from a DC point of view in terms of financing, say, future long-term care beds or future childcare spaces, and recognizing that the county is the agent for childcare and social services if we ever needed the capital. So we know that we have a question before us next week around long-term care. When are we going to start to see a long-term care line? And how does the establishment of the service levels help us in terms of future DCs?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor O'Rourke. So to answer your first question, in the DC study that we're going to be undertaking later next year and through 2023, we'll be addressing long-term care, childcare, and social housing. So the three services we don't currently have in the background study. And you're right, those are provided by agencies other than the city, so we need to rely on them for information and for direction in terms of projects to include. Specific to long-term care, the way that the service standard works is by having a higher service standard initially. It allows you to collect from growth additional funds or a higher level of funding for future growth. So if we have a really low service standard right now, that caps how much we can collect from growth going forward to expand the facility. So anything we can do to increase that service standard makes it easier for us to include things in the background study that would be attributed to growth. But I do also want to acknowledge that those directions for future growth have to come from the Elliott. So the city can't just put in a placeholder that says we see adding 100 beds in the next 10 years. We need the Elliott to come up with that long-term strategy and provide us with their plans for the long term and over the next 10 years so that we can have that as the basis for us collecting those fees from development within the city.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the answer.
Great, thank you for the question. All right, well, let me move, and I just want to make sure, was there anyone that wanted to move the other two consent, or sorry, pull the other two consent items? Okay, so Councillor Gibson, which one did you want to pull? Oh, I think you gave me the heads up,
Yeah,
the heritage one, yep.
Thank you. Just a couple questions to staff.
All right. Well, I think I'd like to move back to our normal processes. So what I'll do is I'll ask the vote to be taken on the development charges bylaw. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands we're also going to be moving consent on 520 Speedville Avenue East. And then I'll come back to you then on the heritage one. Councillor Goller, you had your hand up?
Your worship, I did have a couple of questions about 520.
Okay. All right, everyone. This is good. All right. All right. I'm going to move. We already have it moved and seconded on the DC background study. So I'm going to call the vote on that one. So anyone need to speak to that one before I call the vote? Seeing none. All in favor of the DC background study, show me your hands, please. Excellent. All right. Then we're going to come back to the other two items that have been pulled. I need to go to the delegations first, everybody. And so we're going to move into the statutory public meeting in regards to 601 Scottsdale Drive, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. That's in Ward 5. We're going to have a staff presentation first, and then we have a couple delegations after that. So I'll mute and turn it over to our staff. And Katie, I do see you on the screen. I just think you're still muted. Yeah, you're still muted. There's the presentation. Now
Okay.
you're
Can you hear me
unmuted
now?
and we're good to go. Go for it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sorry, my computer froze there for a second. Good evening, Mayor Guthrie and members of council. This is the statutory public meeting for 601 Scottsdale Drive in Ward 5 to provide information about an application for a zoning bylaw amendment by MHBC Planning on behalf of the applicant, Forum Equity Partners, to permit the conversion of the existing hotel to a student residence and apartment site. The subject site is approximately 2.2 hectares in size and located to the northwest of the intersection of Scottsdale Drive and Stone Road West. The site contains a 4-story hotel, a Holiday Inn until recently, which is proposed to be converted and renovated into a student residence. Surrounding land uses include to the north a small commercial plaza fronting on Scottsdale Drive and vacant land that's zoned for high-density residential. To the east, across Scottsdale Drive, is the Stone Road Mall. To the south, across Stone Road, is a gas station and commercial plaza, together with 3 single detached lots that front onto Stone Road. And to the west, the site is bounded by the Hanlon Expressway. The site is designated as mixed-use corridor in the official plan. This designation allows for a variety of commercial, institutional, and medium to high-density residential uses. A maximum height of 6 stories and a maximum residential density of 150 units per hectare is permitted in this designation. The site is currently zoned SC1-40, which is a specialized service commercial zone that limits the use of the site right now to hotel. The purpose of the proposed zoning is to add the proposed student residence use and an apartment use to the existing SC140 zone. There are two specialized regulations that have been requested for the zone. First, that a maximum density of 150 units per hectare would apply for the student residence or apartment building, and that suites would be considered units for the purpose of the density calculation. And second, that the minimum required parking for a student residence would be 1 parking space for every 2 bedrooms. The applicant proposes to convert the existing hotel into a student residence containing a total of 151 suites, which would be private bedrooms and bathrooms, together with 13 two-bedroom apartment units. The site currently contains 261 parking spaces, which is proposed to be reduced to 210 parking spaces. Vehicular access to the site is proposed to remain via the 2 accesses that currently exist on Scottsdale Drive, with a drop-off on the south end of the building that fronts Stone Road. Staff will review the following issues related to the proposal, including evaluation of the proposal for conformity and consistency with the provincial policy statement, and a place to grow the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, conformity with the official plan, the proposed zoning, including the specialized uses and regulations proposed, review of the proposed concept plan and any changes to site servicing and traffic, review of how the development addresses applicable sections of the Community Energy Initiative, and address all comments and issues raised during the review of the applications. Once the applications are reviewed and all issues are addressed, a report from planning with a recommendation will be considered at a future meeting of council. We ask that any interested members of the public request to receive further notice related to these applications by contacting the Clerk's Department via email at clerks@guelph.ca or by calling 519-837-5603. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie, for your presentation. That's great. As it was noted, there is a couple of delegations, so why don't we go to them first? Then we'll head back to us to see if there's any follow-up, okay? So Trevor Hawkins from MHBC Planning. And Trevor, I see your name coming up on the screen there and your video as well. Can you check your audio for us?
Good afternoon, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming through great. Thank you very much for joining us. So you have no more than 10 minutes in delegation time. I will start the timer for you, and once that's done, my colleagues or myself may have a follow-up question, so just stick around afterwards to see if that occurs. And I'll let you begin right now. Go right ahead.
Absolutely. I think Dana Gilbert from Forum Equity Partners is also registered to speak, and if possible, if she could join me at the same time, we can make it an efficient presentation for council. I know you have a busy night ahead of you, so.
Okay, well, that's fine. Yeah, her name is here from Forum Equity Partners. So let me just see if, can we, through the clerks, can we allow Dana Gilbert to also join us at the same time? Looks like that's about to happen. So hi, Dana, there you are. And can we check your audio as well, please?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council.
You're coming through great, thumbs up. All right, well then I will combine the 10 minutes total between the two of you. And I've reset the clock, don't worry, I didn't waste a bunch of time there. And so I'll start the timer right now, go right ahead.
Excellent. So Trevor Hawkins from MHBC and Dana Gilbert is from Forum Equity Partners. We're here to present the redevelopment of 601 Scottsdale Drive to council, just to give you a bit of background on the site and the objectives and why we're doing it. And I'm going to pass it over to Dana to start with, so she can give you a bit of a vision for the lands, what Forum's trying to do with the building, and then give you a bit of background on who Forum is as well.
Sure. We did have a presentation. I'm not sure if that's going to be shared or if it's something that was shared with you ahead of time.
Shared ahead of time. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So, sorry, my apologies. I thought it was going to be on the screen, so I am just going to pull it up right now on my screen. Apologies for that. In all honesty, I can just move forward. So again, thank you very much, Mayor, as well as members of council, as well as staff. My name is Dana.
So Dana, it's Mayor Guthrie. I've stopped the time. We're very reasonable people here. Did you want to help you with your notes that you've prepared? Did you want to pull it up on your screens there, so at least you have it with you? And then I'll just continue the time after you tell me you got it. Okay.
I definitely appreciate that. Thank you
take your
so
time.
much. Just pulling it up now. Apologies.
Okay,
I thought it would.
No, it's okay. You just tell us when you have it up and ready.
It is up and ready.
All right, I'll continue the time then. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much. So, as I was saying, my name is Dana Gilbert. I'm the head of development at Forum Equity Partner. I think that Katie already talked to the location, which would be the first point, as well as the existing site plan. On the existing site plan in the presentation that we provided, the red bubbled area is really the area on the exterior of the site that will be affected by, or that we will be improving or upgrading the exterior area of the building itself, and then the proposed site plan itself. I wanted to make a correction to something that Katie had stated, that it's actually 164 units and it has 177 beds. 13 of those beds are 2 bedrooms, which is the reason why we're adding the apartment building zone, because those units are not only 2 bedrooms, but they have a living room as well as a kitchen included in them. There are some 1 bedrooms that also contain kitchens as well, but the apartment building zone, or the addition of it, applies to the existing building itself. So the exterior of the building, as you would have seen, has some changes that we are making in terms of the exterior cladding, as well as we have increased the landscaping outside, added some more common indoor and outdoor amenity area, as well as we'll provide spots for EV ready, as well as car share parking proposed on the exterior parking lot, and some islands with some further softscaping to reduce the amount of heat island effect. To that, sorry, I've just missed. So I'm just going to keep going. So in that overall proposal, we've taken the Holiday Inn itself, and we are using the existing building to retrofit the existing Holiday Inn. All of the units on the east side will have more cosmetic amendments to it, where the entire brand of this student housing is more geared towards mature students, and by mature I mean 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year students and or grad students who are in this transitionary period where they want still that sense of community. They still want that sense of the amenities that they had when they were in 1st year university, but it's to service an underserviced really portion of student housing within the University of Guelph that you now see living in either apartment buildings and or sometimes single family homes, and providing a place for them to live where they can still integrate into their community as well. So those community amenities will include barbecue area outside, garden plots that will be programmed with the university's agricultural programs, as well as inside is a big kitchen where they can have either joint meals or prepare joint meals together. There's workspaces, there's breakout rooms. The pool is actually being filled in, but it'll be common area for the students, a big gym, as well as laundry facility. And so it's really a brand around a student hotel where you can have your individual space. It's your bedroom, your unit, your living room, your working space, but to which you want to integrate with your community and meet your fellow students. It is a space for students to continue to be a part of the fabric of that community and student housing community, which right now, either they have to live with certain roommates that they choose, maybe it's 1, 2, or 3. But this is something where it's an annual lease. So they live there year round. It's 24/7 security, professionally property managed, as well as so things like garbage and cleaning and all of the snow removal, etc., will be on a private basis or a professionally property managed basis.
Hi, Dana. It's Mayor Guthrie. I'm so sorry to interrupt you again. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but we're just having a lot of trouble with your audio. Just wondering, would you mind? Well, maybe it's corrected itself. Try again, but keep going. But I'll interrupt you and ask you to turn off your camera. Maybe that would maybe help with the bandwidth.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, turn off the camera. Maybe we'll try that, and I'll add an extra 20 seconds on here, so you can continue with audio.
It's actually not. Oh, somebody turned it off for me, I think.
Okay. Well, you're coming through a lot clearer now, I think. So I'll let you continue. Okay.
Sorry. Now I can see myself again.
Dana, maybe you could just talk about Forum a little bit.
Yeah, I'm almost done. So just to give you a bit of a background on Forum, Forum and Equity Partners has been around for 25 years. Historically, we have been involved in P3 projects and have worked with a number of municipal and government authorities in the past. We have built a lot of York student residences as well as quad student residences across Ontario. We also built the CAMH affordable housing as well as the tunnel that goes from Billy Bishop Airport to the downtown Toronto. And so we're very familiar with working with government and municipalities, as well as ensuring that student housing has a space even after first year. And so that's kind of the background around Forum a bit. And so the landowner of this property is actually the University of Guelph, and we have a ground lease with the university where we purchased the Holiday Inn, and we have a lease with the University of Guelph, who I think submitted a letter of support as well, and we've been working with them to create the student housing project on the site.
Excellent. Maybe I could jump in here just to pull things back into the planning realm for council. So Katie touched on the zoning and the official plan. It's in a mixed use corridor where a range of uses are permitted, including what's proposed for the lands. The existing building, of course, is less than 6 stories, and the proposed density for the lands, if we, after the renovations and the conversion from hotels to student residence in those 13 apartment suites, is still well below the planned density for these lands at 150 units per hectare. The existing site-specific zoning is fairly limited in terms of what it permits. It only permits a hotel. So the nature of the application is to permit the additional uses. And as Dana alluded to, the main reason for asking for the apartment building component was because some of the units in the building would be considered a dwelling unit as opposed to a student residence, suite or room. And we just wanted to make sure that when we went through the process, those 13 units, which would offer a slightly different housing form for students who wanted a bit more space, wanted to be able to have a kitchen in their unit, that the sort of quirkiness between a student residence and an apartment building, we didn't get caught in a definition scenario where when the time came for a building permit, we weren't able to convert those units. So that's the nature of that request. It's to allow those uses within this building. And then we talked to our transportation experts. We looked at the parking rates as they apply on campus, and we recognize that this isn't on campus. So the rate that we've proposed is less than you would see for an apartment building, but we think it's appropriate for a use like this, which is going to have a lot of cyclists, a lot of transit users. We don't want to overpark the site in terms of regulating more parking than we really need. We're already reducing the amount of parking on the site as best we can by adding a lot of landscaping that really wasn't there before to break up that large surface parking lot on the west side. And we hope that that will improve the aesthetics of that part of the site as well, and offer the other landscaping will offer some amenity areas for the future students who would reside in the building. So in terms of the planning,
Trevor, just
yeah.
just giving you a 20-second warning,
Sure,
okay?
sure. I can wrap it up in 20 seconds. So I think just the last slide of our presentation, we kind of tie it all back to the planning framework for council's consideration. We think it's a good fit for the site, fits well within the official plan, and we look forward to working with staff to move the application forward.
Great. Thank you very much to you, Trevor and Dana. We appreciate it. And let me just see if there's a question. I'll go Councillor Caron, and then O'Rourke, and then Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions, but I just want to put on the table that I may, at some point, depending on the information, I may declare a conflict of interest just because in that there's a relationship with my employer and student housing as a competition. I've read the application and I did not believe that I was in conflict, but some of the commentary in the presentation may change my mind. So I just want to put that out there and reserve the right. So my first question is, you mentioned that you are in a P3 relationship in some of your past projects. Is this in any way a P3, or is this a private development? The university is the landholder, but like, Village by the Arboretum and Chancellor's Way, that is the extent of the relationship. The university is not involved in any other way as a P3 partner.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This is not a P3 project whatsoever. We purchased the Holiday Inn outright, and we have a ground lease with the university. However, this is an application coming straight from us as an applicant. Okay, thanks. So there are no kitchens in the units, in the bedroom focused units, and are they? Right. So are they? You have a dining hall and a meal plan required for these units? There is not a meal plan required for these units. There are some units, the 13 2-bedrooms have kitchens, and the other 1-bedroom units have some millwork but they are not kitchens. There is a full kitchen facility that has a number of different stoves and refrigerators and dining hall and everything else, but there is not a meal plan attributed to this. The annual lease would be purely for rent as well as the amenities themselves.
Okay, so for cooking, then the 150 odd units that don't have a kitchen, they would use a common kitchen.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand the zoning, and maybe this is a question more for staff, but I know that in the brief you requested a zoning that was not just R4. You wanted the words student residence in the zoning. Is that, and yet we can't under the Planning Act people zone. And student is a demographic term that specifically has a relationship with an institution. But if you're using the RTA as your annual lease, how would that, there isn't an exclusion that allows for people zoning in that legislation. So I'm trying to understand what the relationship is. And I know we're here in a land use zoning process, but you've asked for that particular term to be used in our zoning bylaw. And we don't have that term on our Chancellor's Way property. And we don't use that terminology in the Solstice properties, which Solstice 1 and Solstice 2, which are primarily student demographic as well. So just in terms of the use of that term, it is a very people zoning term. And I just wondered if you could explain the rationale about why you wanted
Sure.
that terminology in the zoning.
Through you, Mayor Guthrie, the intent wasn't to people zone. It was more to use what I would characterize as a common term as opposed to an exclusionary term. We'd be happy to work with staff to develop an alternative wording, and if staff felt we needed to include some language in the bylaw to define it so everyone understood what it was, we're happy to work with staff to figure out the right way to label it. We just wanted to make sure that it, you know, it's not an apartment suite because it doesn't have a full kitchen, and we were just caught in that where we were trying to come up with a name that Katie and her colleagues would understand what we were getting at, but if there's a better term, we're happy to find it.
Okay, I think we use the term shared rental housing, but I'll send that back to staff and you can work with staff. So my last question then is the design, and I think you've done some, you know, the plans for the exterior so that it doesn't look so much like a hotel. But one of the goals we have in urban design is that it blends in with the landscape, and the renderings you're showing have a piece of artwork on both ends that don't really blend in with the neighborhood. I totally get that it's hip and it's trendy, but in 2 to 3 years, maybe not so much. Is that key to your brand, or is that something you've just put on the renderings to show some color?
It's not necessarily key to our brand. We are, my presentation just loaded. So one of the things I'll note on one of them is that we are working with a number of different local artist groups within the city of Guelph, and more than just, and by a number, I mean, there's an entire group of them that are not only going to assist us with the mural on the outside, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the mural needs to look like this, but it was something that we were going to work with the local artist community to create, as well as the art that will go within the building itself, to bring that community aspect into and integrate it into this building. The large majority of the building itself is a metal black cladding that will age well and weather well, that will give it that modern flair. Really what we were trying to do is differentiate this as in a branding way. And so that mural could be something that is changed consistently as the climate and we bring in those local artist groups to do the same year over year, or when it needs to be done. And so the thought was, let's get the community involved in creating what the outside of this building looks like. So that actual design isn't necessarily what it will be. It was more of a illustrative having a mural done by the local community artistry group in Guelph.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Great, thank you. Councillor O'Rourke, then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I thought Councillor Caron was going to ask about net zero features. We know it's a concern for definitely that generation, all of us, but also definitely students. So I'm just wondering what net zero features you expect the building to have?
So it is a retrofit of an existing building. All of the windows will be changed to high efficiency windows, as well as the skylights that are going to be punched into the roof that you see on the rendering. We've also added a number of different greenery. We have internal as well as external bicycle parking for all of the students. Inside is also a bicycle repair room, and some of the parking spaces will be dedicated EV ready for electrical vehicles, as well as a car share program. Maybe it's 1 or 2 spots that we're working with the local community or local partners, Commute. I think that is utilized at Guelph for those types of ESG principles. One of the things I should note is ESG and impact is extremely important to Forum. We try and do it throughout all of our projects, this one being a full retrofit. So everything in terms of lighting, whether that be LED or the HVAC systems and everything else are being fully upgraded. But also the Holiday Inn, for example, had a ton of furniture that we didn't require, pillows and comforters. We had a big donation drive where everything was donated to local communities or people who wanted that furniture, as well as who were in need for it. And so we'll continue to do those types of non-invasive species, water infiltration, as well as generally landscaping the building itself. But one of the other big things is the adaptive reuse of an existing building and existing infrastructure. So retrofitting that itself into something new that's on existing services and transit and amenities in the area.
One of the other things I could maybe just add to that is
Sure.
it was it was a hotel until recently, and all of the users who would come and go from the hotel would by and large arrive via car. And when there were events held at the hotel, of course, there would be a lot of people who would come by car to attend the events, often from outside Guelph. And so it's now transitioning into a use where day to day, most of the future occupants of the building won't need their vehicle to get to the university or to the numerous shopping opportunities in the area. So we expect the sort of the carbon footprint attributed to vehicles is going to be substantially reduced between the previous use of the property and what we're proposing to change it to as well.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just have a couple other questions. So I'm glad that Mr. Hawkins, you raised parking, because I always ask about parking also. So you talked about how you got to a 1 space per 2 room ratio. What are the allocations for visitors and staff? Because maybe I bike, but my boyfriend comes from, Laurier, and so what's the provision for that? And what are the issues in terms of overflow parking in the neighborhood?
Through you, Mayor Guthrie, one space per 2 bedrooms would require just under 90 spaces for the project, and we have 210. We have too much parking, really, even though we're taking away 50 spaces from what's already on the site. So in terms of visitor and employee parking, there'll be more than enough to accommodate those needs, and there'll still be empty spaces, which, for the time being, won't be utilized in all likelihood.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, just another one around how many of the units will be fully accessible? So I'm sure you can imagine that a student with disabilities might have a really hard time finding accessible accommodation in a basement apartment or in other apartments in the city. So how many will be custom designed for full accessibility?
We are working through the site plan process right now. But at the same time, we wanted to have this public meeting, hear your comments. We've had a pre-consultation. We've heard about the requirements through the ADH design and what will be required. And so we are happy to accommodate what is needed in terms of accessible units. The hotel, again, on the East Tower, the existing building is being retrofitted more from a cosmetic and upgrades, things like, I guess to re-answer, low flow toilets and LED lighting, and obviously overall changing the units itself. On the west side, where the 2 bedroom units are, the 13 bedroom units, we will look to add as many accessible units as is required.
Okay, thanks very much.
And Councillor Bell.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Following up on parking, I agree that you've got way too much parking, but you had mentioned that there was bicycle parking outside and inside. I see from your rendering that you have 30 unsecure spaces outside. Could you describe what parking you for bicycles you have inside, and is it secure?
It is secure pace. It is secure bicycle parking. It's on the, I guess, right beside where you see the outdoor covered bicycle parking. There is a black kind of pop out on the building itself. That internally will be bicycle parking that can be stacked on top of one another, which will also include the bicycle repair station. And Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 26 spaces that are secured internal. There's also the covered exterior bicycle parking, as well as there will be short-term bicycle parking provided along the edge on the outside as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you to you both, especially, oh, it looks like I have another question.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Billings would like to, I'm sorry, Dana, were you about to say
Sorry,
something?
apologies. I'm just looking. It's 83 long-term bicycle parking. 10 of them are short-term and 23 of them are inside with a repair bench, just for clarity.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to Councillor Billings with the question.
So through you, Your Worship, I just wanted to follow up on the upgrading the exterior cladding, the psychedelic artwork. And I was just wondering if you had the opportunity to be in conversation with planning staff regarding the artwork, and were they supportive?
We have not gotten any comments back from planning staff in terms of these renderings. They're included within our planning rationale in our submission of zoning. And as I said, we have not submitted our site plan application at this time. We've had multiple conversations, like I said, with some local artists. And so the intention wasn't to provide a psychedelic. It was more from an illustrative purposes on the exterior. However, we were hoping to do a mural that could be completed by local artists within the community.
Okay, and then also back to the parking. Yes, I realize for student housing, you know, even 210 is probably a lot of parking. However, it was a hotel now proposed shared rental housing. We don't know what the future is. If this doesn't work out, it could go back to a hotel. So my question is, in the report, it does say, and it was mentioned this evening, that you're going to keep 210, even though that's dropped down, you're still going to have 210 parking spaces. So then why in the zoning are you requesting essentially what works out to be around 88 parking spaces instead of, but you say you're going to keep 210. So why are you requesting such a lower number?
Through your Mayor Guthrie, the intent was to establish an appropriate parking rate for that particular use, in recognition that, as you say, there are other land uses permitted in the official plan and in the current zoning that would require more parking. So we wanted to distinguish the use that we're proposing, which would require less parking. So as we're, you know, in the future, if you know the demand isn't there and there's opportunities to do other things on the property that are not, that, you know, to take up the parking spaces, for example, if there's other on-site amenities that Forum wants to explore for the occupants of the building, they're not held to a parking standard that's higher than they need to be.
So through your worship, so what I'm hearing is then there is the possibility that you would be coming in for an expansion of something, whether it's more student housing or another amenity, but something also for this property.
Well, there's no immediate intention to do that, but I think it would allow for, you know, some point down the road, if that was something that Forum wanted to explore. It doesn't create a parking requirement that's so high that these lands would have to stay as they are forever. In other words, we don't want to create an artificially high parking rate that you know, would obligate them to have a large surface parking lot in perpetuity, when the need for that supply of parking for a student residence isn't there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Dana, for meshing your presentation together. We appreciate that and for sticking around for the questions. I have nothing further. So we appreciate it, and you have yourselves a great rest of the night, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you. So council, because this is the first time that this has come to us, we have no one else that has signed up for delegations, but this does mean we should allot a period of time just in case someone else was listening, that they wish to call in. So we're just going to put up a splash screen from the clerks right now with a phone number. And let me see that. It's 519-837-5603. Just in case if you're someone that's interested in this with your opinions, you can feel free to call in. We'll just mute and turn off our cameras for a few moments, and then we'll come back to see if there's any other delegations to this matter. Thank you so much. Hi, Lindsay. It's Mayor Guthrie. Just wondering if you feel there was any calls that came in.
No calls, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, that's good then. I'll just kind of call us back to order then. Seeing everyone pop on here. Thank you. And so now, council, it is back to us. Is there any questions or comments to our staff? And please remember, I'm sorry if I'm a broken record, but our staff have indicated to me that everything that's been captured so far has already been captured. So if you have anything new to add, now is your opportunity. And I'll start with you, Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just the proponents did clarify that it's a private application, but it's on university land. So I'm just curious whether that means that full DCs and property taxes are payable.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe so, but we will report back in our staff report in the decision.
Okay, thank you. And then I would also have a question with respect to economic development, but also the commercial policy review that was done a few years ago. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, I thought the commercial policy review said we actually run out of commercial space by 2041. And I'd like to hear if there are any concerns about the loss of a number of hotels, especially those near the university. So the Royal Brock, is going to have a student residence as well. So when we look in the broader context, and we need to be careful about not just converting everything to residential, I'd like to hear from staff what their concerns are and what our future capacity is to accommodate tourists or conventions or events.
Okay, so that's a takeaway that would come back then by staff to be embedded in the report. Staff, you're okay with that?
Yes, that's fine. We will review it and report back. And I would also note that John Reagan is here tonight if he wanted to add anything regarding hotel inventory in the city.
John, do you feel you need to add to that now, or just bring it back in the report? Again, I'm not trying to say no to you. I just wondered if you.
We'll certainly
Go
bring
ahead.
it back. We'll certainly bring it back, Mr. Mayor. We'll be consulting with planning on this, so we'll bring back a fulsome report on the rooms and where we stand.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, if I could just ask one more takeaway. When a hotel is converted to, student residence like that, do we have any research in terms of what happens to the broader area? What are the movements of student housing in sort of residential neighborhoods? Like, do we have an idea of what to expect? So you could ask the same question in a gentrification context. But so what should the community expect if this proposal goes forward? What's the experience in other communities?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beldenalt.
Thank you. So I just have one or two comments. I guess I'm okay to sort of.
Yep. For sure.
So I think the ratio of one space for every 2 beds is an appropriate ratio. So I have no issue with that aspect. However, I see it on a lot of applications that we are getting now, and I know that we are undertaking new parking policy, but the bicycle parking issue is an important one, and most of the residents here, I think, will be using bicycles. The applicant perhaps doesn't quite understand that there are several types of bicycle facilities. There's bicycle storage, which is, one bike on top of another bike. That's not really bicycle parking. And I think that I would like to see the size and the accessibility, the secureness of the bicycle parking. I think that's important for this application, and I would hope that when it will come back after we complete our parking zoning review, and I would hope that the review would give us some clearer direction on how we want bicycle parking to be formatted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alt and then Karan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Karan raised a question that I think is pretty important, and that is, are we not people zoning in a sense? And the question that came up in my mind is that, and I have no foundation for not moving this forward, by the way. Once this is approved, assuming it is approved, and this is for staff to take away to respond, what prevents this from being converted in such a fashion to Airbnbs or even supportive housing or social housing. This is all well and fine that this is university residences, but this would make perfect supportive housing, and that could have been a potentially another use as well. So I don't need the answer now. It's just a takeaway, please.
Great, thank you. And Karan, please, is next.
Great, two things. Councillor Alt kind of referred to it as university residences, and I just think we need to all be really clear. This is not a university residence. This is a private residential development that is marketed and targeted to the student population. So my experience, and Councillor Downer can concur, is that students have cars. They use bicycles, absolutely. They're avid cyclists, and probably they get to and from campus. Will likely use alternate transportation, but that doesn't mean that they won't have cars. So I just want to make sure that staff are cognizant that a lot of the problems we have in our near campus neighborhoods in Ward 5, Ward 6, and Ward 1 are parking issues on single family detached lots and accessory apartments with insufficient parking and the overflow parking of student cars on streets. And we've noticed this December 1st. December 1st, we see this happening as the fines start rolling out for those cars that are overflowing from those properties on our residential streets. So I think we do need to talk about parking ratios to make sure they're realistic. And then my last point was, I know this isn't land use zoning, so I apologize because I know we're here for land use zoning and we need to stay in our lane on that. But the applicant did mention private property management and private waste collection. And I wonder when it gets to site plan, if staff could just make a note, or if you are going to be discussing waste collection in your report back to council, that there is consideration given to municipal collection.
Great, thank you. All right, I see nothing further. So would someone be willing to move receipt of the application for me? Councillor Bell, and seconded by Councillor Alt. And is there anything further? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand of receiving this application. And it looks unanimous to me. I just need to confirm it with the clerk.
Yep, unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're doing well here. We'll keep moving forward. The next one up for discussion with delegations is a decision report for 66 Duke Street. And that's in Ward 1. We have 3 delegations on this tonight. So we're moving back to 5 minutes allotted for delegations. And the first delegation we have on 66 Duke Street is Hugh Handy from the GSP Group on behalf of the owner. So let's see if Hugh can join us.
Hello, Mayor Guthrie.
Hi, Hugh. Thank you so much for joining us. We can hear you fine. Let me just go to my clock here, and I will start the timer for you right now. You have no more than 5 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Guthrie, members of council, staff, and ladies and gentlemen watching. My name is Hugh Handy, and I'm a senior associate and land use planner with GSP Group. I'm here this evening as part of really, I guess, a joint delegation with Edward Thomas. Edward Thomas is also on the line and would be up next. So maybe I could stop there, Mayor Guthrie, and just ensure maybe that Edward is open in case there are questions.
Okay, I've stopped the clock. So is this a joint 5-minute delegation between the two of you, and then questions afterwards?
Yeah, questions after. I don't think we'll be long.
Okay, no problem. So I've stopped the clock, and let me just see if Edward Thomas is also able to be brought in by the clerks.
Thank you.
I must say, I do like this joint delegation thing.
Hello.
Imagine if you had 20 delegations and they're all like together.
Exactly.
Under 5 minutes.
We aim to please.
Hello.
Hello,
Edward Thomas.
sir.
Edward's
Yes.
there, our architect.
Okay. So you've only used 31 seconds of your 5 minutes, so I will now continue the clock, and the two of you can be there to have the rest of the joint delegation, and then just stay on the line when you're done. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Guthrie. As I mentioned, I also have Edward Thomas, who is the architect on the project from SRM. We've reviewed the report with our client, IT Enterprises. We would like to thank staff in working through the planning process and evaluating the comments and input that we have received through that. There is a recommendation before you this evening to approve the OPA and ZBA for the site. We would look for the support of council. We believe this is great infill development that will assist in achieving more housing in the downtown area, and we would look for the support of that recommendation before you this evening. With that said, that is the brief presentation that we have tonight, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Well, thank you to you both to be available if there's any questions. Councillor Gibson and Councillor Downer, and then to Councillor O'Rourke. Go right ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Handy, for joining us tonight. I'm going to ask one question of you, and then I'll ask one question of staff. The first one is about parking. I'll ask you, and then the second one is more of a planning question for staff on density. I noticed that I think you proposed one parking spot per unit in the report. And I'm just wondering, how will this be marketed? Will it be marketed accordingly? Are you disconnecting the parking from the units, or people having to buy their own? And also, where were you proposing for visitor or overflow parking? Help me understand that a little bit more.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Gibson. The idea would be of the 22 spaces, 2 would be for visitor, but they would be unbundled, so that if you weren't looking for a space, that you would be able to not have that or not purchase that. So I think that probably, does that answer your question on that point?
Yeah, so you're unbundling every parking space from the units themselves, so people buy a unit without a parking space and then have to purchase a parking space if they'd like it?
That's correct.
Okay, so it'll be marketed that way. My concern going back to the beginning of this file was just having that overflow parking out onto the roads and having public space sort of having to accommodate overflow parking. So is there forgive me, but I think there's a municipal lot nearby. Is there parking options nearby that aren't on street? A couple of the comments that I've heard from the community is, can't handle any more cars on the road, but can you help me understand where overflow parking might go?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Gibson, I believe there is a lot, a municipal lot, at least a little bit further up off of Elizabeth Street. I'm not certain of that, but I guess some of it would be ultimately on-street parking that would be part of this development, and as this area continues to evolve with more density.
Okay, thanks. So I'm more comfortable now with your comment about unbundling the parking, so that people are buying a unit, and people should know they're buying a unit without a parking spot, and that if they need one, they'll be paying extra for that. So, okay, thanks very much, Mr. Handy.
That's correct.
Second question.
Yes. Thank you.
I have 2 more, Councillor Downer and O'Rourke.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Handy. So I'm asking about the trees. So there are 18 to be removed. And the curious part is that 7 are off-site and they're going to be either destroyed or too badly injured. And 8 are shared. And one of the conditions is that there must be permission from the adjacent property owner to remove trees. I'm assuming you've had discussions, and how are those discussions going?
Through you to the councillor, Yes, there has been ongoing discussions. We've had some discussions more recently with some of the owners, including 38 Alice Street. And those will be ongoing through the site plan process as we move forward. We're prepared to work with those owners along there. They've already indicated to us, at least, their support for that, but that we need to look at appropriate compensation and replanting as per city policy and working with them. And we're quite prepared to do that.
And also, the initial diagrams you had with the large trees along one side, it was indicated in the report from just on one of the internal memos that you would not be able to plant those large trees because of the small space that's allowed. Or is there an alternative you're planning? And I know this will be coming at site plan later, but just for my own peace of mind, are there alternative plans for along that side?
We've tried to look at it, whether we will be able to plant some trees along that side, and I think through the amended application, we've tried to pull the building as far north so that we can look at any of those aspects as we move through the site plan process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Handy. I'm just wondering if you can help me with my parking map. So you have 22 spaces, but one of those for residents is accessible. Is that correct? So you really have 21 spaces. And then you're going to add 2 visitor. So I'm just trying to get at how much visitor parking do you really have? And do you have an accessible visitor spot in addition to an accessible resident spot?
Yeah. And maybe I could shift this through you, Your Worship, to Councillor O'Rourke, shift this to Edward Thomas, just to move through on the spaces, if that's okay, Edward.
Yeah, that'd be fine. There is, at this time, there is not a visitor parking allocated for barrier-free as well. So that the barrier-free is the barrier-free spot for the design.
Okay, then I've got a concern about that. If anybody has a visitor who needs barrier-free parking, and the limited amount of visitor parking space in case somebody needs a PSW to visit or a delivery or things like that. So I think that's a concern. I think it's a concern that you don't have any visitor barrier-free parking, especially if you're saying there's a municipal lot or that person would have to rely on street. Did I hear that part of the presentation correctly?
That's correct, Councillor O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the questions we had for you. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. We have one more delegation I just need to pull up here, and it is Scott Frederick from the Ward Residents Association. And
hello.
Scott is calling in by phone. Hi, Scott. We can hear you fine.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
I will start the clock now for you. Go right ahead.
Okay. So first, I want to acknowledge that the developer has listened and responded to the concerns of residents of the neighborhood, especially in the early stages of planning. At the previous planning meeting for this proposal, the Residents Association had several asks, and the biggest ask was to not increase the density beyond what is allowed under the plan and not to reduce setbacks. So the most recent plan has swapped the north and south setbacks, so the entire building is moved 0.4 meters to the north. So 0.4 meters is about 17 inches, which is not really much relief when you're dealing with a 4-story building. I realize, though, that it is a smaller footprint than the original building, but that was something that was asked for. We supported the inclusion of a range of unit sizes, but we wanted to see more 3-bedroom units, and there remains just still only one 3-bedroom unit. All the trees are removed from the site, including ones that are shared with neighbors. The one tree that was specifically mentioned in delegations was a shared black walnut tree. And this is the only native tree on the site, and that's to be removed. Let's see, we asked for changes to the facade of the building to make the vehicle entrance less prominent than the pedestrian entrance, and that has been done. Renewable energy considerations were asked for and welcomed. There was many comments about parking from residents and councillors, specifically that parking be sufficient and contained within the site. Bike parking is being provided where none is required, but if every unit had 1 car and 2 bikes, there's still not enough bike parking. If 2 spots are removed for visitor parking, then there's not enough spots for 1 vehicle per unit. Because I think we've got 22, and you take 2 away for visitors, you're short 2. But unbundling parking is potentially a benefit as it puts a price on parking and could potentially lower the price of units. It represents a move towards a more user-paid system. And using technology to manage parking is a bold experiment, and we all hope it works out. So in general, there's some issues that are difficult to mitigate. The increasing allowable density by 50% is the issue that many of the other concerns flow from. If density is allowed to increase, then staying within regulated setbacks or staying above parking minimums becomes difficult. And as delegates and some council members have recognized, this project has been designed to fit into a future, not yet designed plan where parking minimums are lower and densities are higher. The problem with designing to future plans is that it erodes confidence in the integrity of the current plan and encourages future deviations from the plan from other developers. It also presents a constantly moving target that there will always be another imaginary future plan to plan to. As Mike Barber said in his delegation last October, there's a time gap between what we plan for and current conditions. We want to plan for a future with less cars, but we have to live in a present where many people still need them, and our transit system still falls short of being able to replace cars for most people. Two-way all-day GO train service was mentioned as a reason why we might not need as much parking. This presupposes that the residents are all going to commute out of town. Guelph is more than a bedroom community for Toronto. Encouraging people to work and live in close proximity would be much better for the environment. Nobody's going to be taking the GO train to get groceries or packing kids to school. We'll still need transit or personal vehicles for that. So as I said earlier, there's some innovative ideas here, and if it passes, we'd all be interested to see if it works or not. And that is the end of my delegation.
Well, thank you so much. And let me see if there's a follow-up for you. There isn't. So thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thanks for having me. Bye.
Take care. Yep, bye-bye. All right, and that's all the delegations we had signed up for this matter for the decision report. Is there any questions back to staff? I will go with Councillor Gibson, and I saw Councillor O'Rourke's hand go up, and I'll just throw it out there if anyone is willing to move and second the motion as well after the questions.
Thank you through you, Mayor Guthrie. I'll move it once I get my questions answered, but I'm not sure if I'm going to move it yet. Just that's saying.
Okay, ask your question first. Yeah.
Notwithstanding the parking issue, so we are in close proximity to the downtown. I'm setting up my question here, Mr. Mayor. We have a nightmare example of what happens when you don't put enough parking on the site out in the East End right now. It's a really tough situation, and I wouldn't want to repeat that this close to downtown. But this development kind of screams first-time buyer, young couple, no kids, or downsizing couple, seniors. It kind of screams that demographic to me with the limitation of parking. But the density is a question that the delegates have raised, and I think we raised this the first time as well. Can staff help us from a planning perspective? Because I don't want to be offside with staff, but from a planning perspective, how did we justify allowing 150 units per hectare instead of 100? Because that's a big question from a planning perspective of as to it's a big. I know we've done it before, or maybe you can help me with the precedent here, but can you help me understand why that fits in our official plan and why that's a justified change from a planning perspective?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gibson. I think there are a number of reasons why staff supported the proposed density. There are criteria that we evaluate official plan amendments against, and specifically multi-unit buildings as well through our OP. So that criteria includes how the built form, its scale and height and massing fits in with its surrounding areas, whether there are appropriate services available for the site, both infrastructure, hard services, and soft services, amenities, things like that in the area. The site's location in terms of accommodating additional residential is part of our urban growth center and contributes to the intensification required both within the built boundary and within the urban growth center to achieve our growth plan targets. And we look at issues of compatibility in terms of the immediate site around it and how it fits in with the immediate neighborhood as well.
Okay, thank you. Maybe a little bit deeper dive on that. Is there a quantification of scoring metrics that you use that help justify the density? And I'm just wondering if this same proposal comes forward along Victoria Road in the next little while, where density is just, it's 50% higher than what was planned for the site. How do we prevent the precedent of being set that, how do staff walk back one proposal and allow another one to go forward? Is it a quantifiable metric? Is it a scoring system? I know you walk us through it in the report, but is there documented matrices that you're using?
Through you, Mayor Guthrie, to Councillor Gibson, planning is not a quantifiable process in this regard. What we do is we do go back to those policies in the official plan. So section, as I was saying before, 1314 sets out the requirements for an official plan amendment, and we look through each of them and see if achieved. Section 9311 is specific to the criteria for multi-use buildings, and we go through those policies and see what is and isn't achieved. And we look at those in the context of the principles of good planning that are in our official plan, the policies we have within the designations, and we look at what is and isn't appropriate in the local site context as well. So we do evaluate sites individually in that regard. So what is appropriate here may not be appropriate on Victoria Road for a variety of factors, and we have to evaluate each of them.
Right. I say that not in a vacuum because I know there's another file on Victoria. We're not talking about that tonight, but the proximity to downtown, I'm assuming, weighed into your decision making here for density, like the
Yes,
walkability to downtown. Yeah.
That would be a factor, definitely.
Okay, last question. I noticed, I know now I've reoriented myself. There's a municipal lot within a block of this location going up. Are there, again, a bit of a technical question, is the city allowing monthly parking passes in that municipal lot and or overnight passes in that lot? Because I'm just picturing the first winter, people are going to be looking for places to park that overflow parking. They're going to need something somewhere to put those cars. I'm a realist. I know people will have cars there. So are there monthly passes available at that parking lot next door, or overnight, hourly? Help me understand that process.
Through you, Mayor Guthrie, it's my understanding that that site was used for monthly parking. I don't have a current status of it, so I can't confirm that tonight. But planning staff did not rely on that parking in their recommendation of the proposed parking ratio. So we do expect that unbundling parking could reduce the need, together with the walkability, the availability of transit, and the provision of bike parking, so that not every unit would need to own a car, would own a car because of those other alternatives that are available. So we don't rely on that lot.
Okay, thank you. I guess my comment, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'll be very brief. I'm glad to hear the proponents say that they'll be marketing this property accordingly, because I would be struggling with the parking ratios if it wasn't unbundled. So this will be strictly a non-car centric development, and if you want one, if you want a car spot, you'll be paying a premium. And there's a little bit of overflow parking in the surrounding area, which I know will be utilized for the first little while. So I didn't want to see cars all over the street. And I think we've tried to satisfy that. It's not perfect, but I'll be supporting it, and I'm happy to move with Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bell will second. Thank you. And I believe only Councillor O'Rourke I had next on my list.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our planning staff. So this building will require accessible ramp, automatic doors, I imagine, right?
Through you, Mayor Guthrie, to Councillor O'Rourke, I believe those would be building code requirements.
Okay, so then can I ask you, through you, Mr. Mayor, is it AODA compliant to have no barrier-free visitor parking? Or is it aligned with our zoning? I'm really concerned that there's zero barrier-free visitor parking. And, you know, if you have all those other amenities, it's with the assumption that you will have people in the building who are either residents or visitors who will require that amenity.
Through you, Mayor Guthrie, to Councillor O'Rourke. The parking, the accessible parking space and its location and whether it's visitor or not, I believe is normally looked at site plan. I don't have a firm answer right now as to how it would be allocated. So it is something that often changes at site plan. So I would look at it at that point. Certainly, we would discuss with the applicant the best approach, and it would also likely depend on the number of ultimate visitor parking spaces provided, given that that's the minimum requirement. So should other spaces not be taken up, there may be the ability to provide for additional visitor parking. It depends on how the parking is allocated, which we often don't know necessarily at the zoning stage.
So then just a comment, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I find that really highly problematic, given the tight parking constraints, and that we don't know for sure if there's going to be a barrier-free visitor parking space. I find that highly problematic, and that we don't consult the accessibility committee till site plan, which I understand is our process, but I don't think that's acceptable.
You and Councillor Bell.
Thank you. So I understand that parking is the supreme goal of many perspectives on new development. However, in the downtown, I think it's more about streetscape and design, and I don't think that the parking philosophies that are developed in suburban applications, they just don't apply downtown. What people are interested in is affordability, access to public amenities which they have downtown, they don't need to drive to those amenities. So I think, although this application is a little edgy, I think it's well positioned in our evolution towards a society with fewer cars. It's not out 10 years. It may be out 2. And as Mr. Barber pointed out in the previous meeting, we need to plan on a future horizon. And it's I think that architecturally, this is one of the best applications that we've seen in the city. And I'm sure that they won't have any trouble selling without parking spaces, because a lot of people around the downtown, they don't have cars anymore. So, thank you.
Thank you. I see no one else with comments, but I do have a couple quick questions as a follow-up based on some of the commentary so far. Just want to make sure that we're getting, well, that I'm understanding the issue correctly. I don't want it to be left sort of uncertain in regards to the site plan part. I can tell that there's some friction in regards to the barrier-free parking. Is that something that council could actually put as a requirement into the approval for this tonight?
Thank you, Mayor Guthrie. So currently, the zoning bylaw would not require an accessible space for visitor parking for this development.
That was my
If
second
council,
question. So sorry to interrupt you,
so
Krista.
it's not a current requirement. If council did require an accessible visitor parking space, you could make it you could add it to the zoning that's in front of you tonight by either taking a space away that would be rented for the units or leased to the units or sold to the units.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
you could ask for another space to be provided.
Ask for another space to be provided.
Somehow.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding, again, just for the public portion of this, that everyone understands, there already is an accessible spot that will be provided, although it needs to be purchased. That was a question. I probably didn't word it very well. Question mark at the end of that statement.
Sorry, Mayor Guthrie. The accessible parking space could be purchased, or if no one does purchase it, it could be available for visitor parking.
Okay. And from an equity
Or
point of
accessible
view,
space.
all other, yeah, that's what I meant. Yep, you're saying it right. And from an equitable point of view, all other applications that come in, you know, parking aside of the amount or quantity, the allotment under each of those developments that has come in for years until it's changed is being met equally as it is being met right now when it comes to accessible visitor parking. You indicated it's not in there anyways. So all the other developments and such that we've been approving to date, they would have the same scrutiny, but also they're meeting the requirements under our bylaws and zoning.
Mayor Guthrie, so that would depend on the size of the development. As a larger development comes forward, there's more accessible parking spaces required. Smaller developments, there's not accessible visitor parking spaces required, similar to this one. So it's reviewed independently, and if they need an amendment to that zoning, then it would come through council or the Committee of Adjustment.
All right, let me put it another way, because I agree I didn't make that very clear. You, as our professional planning staff, you support exactly what it is in regards to the parking that's being allotted at this site. Yes?
Yes, Mayor Guthrie, it meets the current zoning requirements.
And then you'll obviously take the commentary away if this passes through to site plan.
Yes, I can confirm that.
Okay, great. All right, I'll call the vote then. So all in favor, please raise your hand for me on the screen for this development. Okay, I'm going to say your name, and as I say your name, please remove your hand for me. So Karan, Gordon, Hoffland, Downer, Salisbury, Gibson, Bell, Alt, McKinnon, Guthrie. And against this, please raise your hand for me. O'Rourke, Gawler, Billings. And to our clerk, you've captured that okay?
Yes, I have. Thanks, Mayor Guthrie.
All right, that passes. Thank you so much. Let me just pull up the agenda here again. Okay, we're going back to the consent, I believe, that we had a couple of them pulled. And I'm going to go to, I think I had you, Councillor Gibson, with a question on
Yeah,
the heritage file. 919 York Road. Intention to designate under Section 29, Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So you have a question on that. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. It's more of a touch point with staff, and I want to actually acknowledge that I apologize for not reaching out and asking this question in advance if it's a simple answer. The mapping and then the correspondence to the report the mapping kind of threw me off, where you drew a property line around the entire site, and then you just identified the three units on the site for designation. But the property itself is now zoned as community mixed use center. So it is one of those sites that we rezoned through the commercial policy review for a potential grocery store location, or another use, a higher end use than what it is now. It's the old Legion Hall. I just wanted to make sure that this proposed listing does not complicate the usage or future usage of this property for a higher use from a commercial perspective. I didn't get that from the report, but when I read the correspondence, it did make me a little bit nervous that you drawn the boundary around the entire property. And I just wanted to clarify that this does not hold back any uses of the site, the existing Legion Hall itself, or the old Legion Hall in the parking lot there, for future use. Maybe I'll add one last. I believe
sorry,
the report.
Councillor Gibson.
Yeah.
Just to staff, again, as in past practice, whoever has the answer, just jump in. Okay, Councillor Gibson, did you need to ask one extra little thing there before whoever jumps in?
I think the report's clear that you're only talking about the 3 buildings on the property, and there is some debate as to whether or not it is the actual property of the old Legion Hall or not. But can you help me understand what this potential listing means for the rest of the broader site? Is it being held back at all?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can respond to Councillor Gibson's question. I believe you're referring to attachment 2 in the report, and that shows the subject property highlighted and the 3 heritage attributes that are proposed for protection under a heritage designation bylaw. Under the Heritage Act, when council goes about a designation is of real property and any buildings or structures thereon, but especially and only those buildings or features that are described in the heritage attributes. So really I think that image is actually quite telling, in that yes, the property identified as 919 York Road, but the designation under the Ontario Heritage Act, it essentially at its essence only affects those heritage attributes that are proposed in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. That helps me. I'm going to ask a more straightforward question because I don't know what the plan is or if there is any plan. I don't know the property owner, but if there were plans to redevelop that site minus the 3 buildings that are proposed for heritage listing, if there was a plan to redevelop that old Legion Hall and parking lot and create it into the community use center that it is, provided it doesn't impact the heritage attributes that we're proposing to list, there's no showstopper associated with that today, right? I believe we're just proposing a listing of the 3 attributes on the property, not the entire heritage, not the entire old Legion Hall and parking lot and all that stuff. Sorry, I'm talking in layman talk tonight. I'm sorry.
No, just regular plain talk is appreciated. I'll reiterate that it's what's under discussion for protection would simply be those 3 the heritage attributes of those 3 elements of the property along the western portion of the property.
Okay, thank you. You have put my mind at ease on the record in the public forum. I really appreciate it. We worked very long and hard for 3 years, I believe, during that commercial policy review to finally rezone some property out in the East End for some other commercial uses. And I'm just glad that we're not compromising that at all. I really appreciate it. Thank you. No more questions, Mr. Mayor.
Would you mind moving the motion then, Councillor Gibson? Yes? Okay. Would someone mind seconding it? Okay. Councillor Gordon, I'll go to you. Okay. And I'm just looking to see if there's anything more on it, unless I can just, we have the recommendation that is strong from our staff, also Heritage Guelph, the Heritage Committee. So if I can call the vote, looks like I can. All in favor, please raise your hand on the screen for me. That looks unanimous to me. Through to the clerk, can you confirm that?
Confirm unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Good teamwork tonight. I have one more. I believe Councillor Goller, you had a quick question in regards to the other issue, which was on Speedville for 520 Speedville Avenue East. It is a decision report, and there was no delegations, a couple pieces of correspondence. Over to you, Councillor Goller.
Thank you, through your worship. I have two questions. The first one, just a clarification in terms of the design. The main outstanding concerns that I've heard from some of the neighbors is about the image that the development will present on the street. So I understand that the final details about the materials and all of that is decided at the site plan stage. But I wanted to know, does the community have any input at that stage, or is this the last opportunity for input from community members as to the look and feel of the final construction?
Through Mayor Guthrie to Councillor Goller. So this is the last chance that the community would have input, and I understand the developer hosted a neighborhood meeting as well, so they did provide input into that. Staff will look at the site plan and review it and review the elevations once they come in for final site plan approval or first site plan submission.
Okay. And so any feedback that was given by community members, Ms. Walkie, would be considered down the road in terms of when staff is doing the review for the final design and look of the property.
Yes, through Mayor Guthrie to Councillor Goller, I can confirm that, and Mr. Whitmer was also on site for that neighborhood meeting as well, and heard the comments from the residents.
Great. No, thank you very, very much for that. And at that meeting, there was a question raised that I haven't seen a reply to. And Ms. Walkie, we spoke about this, but I just wanted to get it out here. There had been some requests whether or not the city could ask for conditions from the future condo board as to how many of the units could be leased or could be bought by people that are investing, whether any of those things could, whether the city could say, well, you cannot sell it to someone that's going to buy 10 of those units. Whether they would prefer it to be people that actually buy to live there. Is that something that city council can do, or is it completely outside of our scope to say we have these conditions that we would like the condo board to put in their bylaws?
Through you, Mayor Guthrie, to Councillor Goller. So through this application that's before you tonight, you're approving or making a recommendation on the number of units, the number of parking spaces, the setbacks, the amenity area. We are not considering the tenure of the units, who lives there, if it's rental or if it's ownership. So that's not something that is for consideration. We are aware that some condo boards do impose those regulations through the condominium board itself. And they can change them with a super majority, 67% can change the declaration in the condominium declaration, but that's not something that we as the city do.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I sincerely appreciate it. And I also wanted to acknowledge your team's work. For this particular application, there have been, now this is the third version of the application, and it has come a long way from what was first proposed to now. And I wanted to thank you for all the work that you have been doing on that front. Mr. Your Worship, if I could move the recommendation.
Certainly, thank you. And would someone like to second that for us? Makes sense to go with your ward mate. So thumbs up from Councillor Gordon. I appreciate that. Is there anything further on this before I call the vote then? I only have one thing to say, and it was mentioned by our staff that the developer had an on-site meeting with the neighborhood. I can tell you that I heard from a few people in the neighborhood that they thoroughly appreciated that. So take note, other developers in the community. You go the extra mile a little bit on those types of meetings, it can go a long way to solving some issues and hearing some opinions and changing some things. Just a little bit of a nudge from the mayor. All right, with that, I'll call the vote on this housing development. All in favor, please raise your hand for me. That one looks unanimous to me. To the clerk, is that confirmed by you?
Yes, unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. I just want to make sure that I think we covered everything off today. Development charges, yes. Speedville, yes. Heritage issue, yes. Scottsdale, yes. Duke Street, yes. Not too shabby, everyone. Okay, so we are at that moment of the evening where we are looking for the bylaws to please be look to adopted by Councillor Bell, bringing them forward, please.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Mayor, just a quick note about two of the bylaws.
Oh, yes. Go ahead. You can explain
Yes.
it. And
Okay.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
There was just a minor typo in bylaw number 20645 and 20658. They referenced section 38(1) of the Planning Act, whereas it should reference section 34(1).
Yeah.
So if we could just pass those bylaws as amended, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to bring that up. Actually, I didn't bring it up on purpose just to test you, and you did a very good job by reminding everyone. So if you could say as amended, Councillor Bell, that would be great.
Yes, I will. So I move that the bylaws numbered 2021, numbers 20, 643, 645, 658, 659, and 661 are hereby passed as amended.
Thank you. Councillor Hoffman's willing to second that. That's fantastic. Anything on those bylaws then? Okay, hearing and seeing none, put your hand up there if you want to vote for that for me. Looks unanimous to me. Lindsay, are you okay with that?
Confirmed, yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And no announcements at this point, so I am looking for...
Your Worship, just a
okay. What is it,
quick point of
Councillor
order, Your Worship.
Sure.
When Councillor Bell was reading, I did not hear 44. I heard 43 and 45. I just wanted to make sure that 44 had been mentioned.
Well, I don't remember.
I did not read 644 because it's not showing in the agenda.
Okay, well, I that is the bylaw for 520 Speedville. So
Yeah,
I would
it's
appreciate
I have it right in front of me as well. So maybe
And
Councillor.
I'll move that bylaw as well.
Yep.
2021-2644.
Okay, Councillor Alt will second that one as well. Just before I call the vote on that, through to you, Lindsay. I'm sorry, I just don't have your email in front of me from earlier. Was 2044 one of the amended ones? No, it wasn't. It was
No, it
only
was
45 and 58. Okay, yeah, I got it here. Okay, so I'll call the vote then on that bylaw just to make sure 44 was covered. All in favor? Show that your hands for me for that one. Thank you, Councillor Gower. That passes unanimously. I'm pretty sure that's confirmed by you, Lindsay. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gower. That was a good point of order. Well done. All right, and so at this point, I am asking for adjournment, please. And Councillor Billings is willing to do that. Councillor Hoffman's willing to help us out by seconding it. And all in favor of adjournment for tonight, please raise your hands. Looks unanimous to me. Thumbs up, everyone. Stay safe and have a great rest of the night. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Bye-bye.